I've played tons of games on a vast majority of systems, but sometimes games can be really bad. That's what we're going to talk about today. 10 bad PC games that I've had the misfortune of playing so far. These games that I'm about to mention made me want to take a carbon monoxide bong rip out of a Hellcat V8 at max RPMs. It's bad. Now, I'm sure at some point I'll find more games to add to this list, but for now, these are the ones that take the cake for being some of the most abhorrent human errors to ever grace my eyeballs, in my opinion. You can recognize early PC games from a mile away. They all sound the same, and if they're a platformer, they all tended to play the same. Duke Nukem 1 was a fine example of that. It played like Biomenace and Monster Bash because, well, they were all made by the same people, the fine folks at Apogee. Anyway, Duke Nukem 1 is playable for a little bit, then you realize the total jank that comes your way. You'll be forced to deal with mandatory damage, maps that are far too big, and just a general unfun playability that makes you want to swan dive off of Mount Everest. This is where the Duke Nukem series began with Duke Nukem, spelled N-U-K-U-M, due to copyright concerns with Duke Nukem from Captain Planet. Now in the game, we go up against Dr. Proton, who's trying to take over the world. Duke has to stop him in Los Angeles, then he goes to the moon in episode 2, and then he goes to the future to kick his ass in episode 3. Even though the story is simple, the game unfortunately isn't great. The most recent game was Duke Nukem Forever, which in my opinion was just a fan service tied to a franchise that was in development hell for decades. Now, before you sharpen your pitchforks, this game isn't that bad. It's what it does to you that is bad. It's a really fun game where you fly a ship through 3 sectors in different episodic formats. It's the apogee formula. As you kill enemies, you earn money from them, and you're able to update your ship with better armor, better weapons, and yeah, it's a basic shoot 'em up. So what happened to make this game end up on my list? Well, if you play the game and you beat an episode, the game lets you keep your investments, but it turns the difficulty to an absolute skull-fucking Neo Geo 50 out of 10 difficulty that makes the game borderline unplayable. And no, you can't turn down that difficulty. It defaults to veteran, and it remains there. This game was a standalone, but it does have sort of a spiritual successor in 1998's Dinosaur, created by Mountain King Studios. Little trivia for you, this was one of my dad's favorite modern shooters. Well, Dinosaur was. He told me he hated Raptor. I can see why. Throughout my years of playing games, I've learned that if I see anything from Acclaim, it's going to be edgy and more than likely, obnoxious buffoonery. Turok is 100% unbridled, obnoxious buffoonery. Yes, I know your childhood likely had fond memories of being a Native American warrior from the great beyond with powerful arrows, and the idea of fighting dinosaurs may have been epic to you, but something tells me you never made it to the last level. The last level in Turok Dinosaur Hunter is a terrible time. You get barely any health, you constantly run out of ammo, and you're contending with some of the worst controls you can imagine on a FPS adventure game. Throughout the whole game, you don't know where to go, you don't know what to do, you can't really see anything, you run around aimlessly, sometimes you run into enemies, those enemies respawn. I hated it. I tried playing this on the Nintendo 64, I couldn't stand it, so I wanted to play the PC port hoping that it was more sufferable, and guess what? It isn't. The only reason this game even exists is because Acclaim bought out Valiant Comics in 1994, and because of that, they had tons of material to make subpar games with. From that purchase, they were able to make Turok, Shadow Man, Project Swarm, Armorines, and Exo Man of War games. I really don't enjoy Acclaim's nonsense at all. Turok's most recent game was simply named Turok, and it was released in 2008, and it blows. Oh well. When I was a kid, Postal was the poster child for social deviance. At least Postal 2 was. It was funny, crude, edgy, and it challenged the status quo of popular games at the time. But due to my self-established rules on checking games out in the order that they were created, I had to play Postal 1, and I was kind of upset at it. In Postal, you're going out of your way to murder innocent people, wiping out entire cities to be an active shooter. If this game came out today, it would have likely been banned from sale, much like the game Hatred, which is just a darker version of Postal. And yes, you can buy Hatred, but I don't think the public would like it. The final level of the original version also has you shooting up a school, so it didn't really sit well with me. I felt dirty after beating it. The most recent Postal game was released last year, Postal 4 No Regrets, and I've never played it, but I've heard it's very similar to Postal 2, which is a great game if you like toilet humor and peeing on people. Do you like sniper games like Sniper Elite? Well, if you want to play an even older version of Sniper Elite, or more so a competitor of Sniper Elite, then feel free to check out Sniper Art of Victory for like 5 minutes before you uninstall it and then put your computer at the curb. You might not recognize this franchise because the first game was so fucking bad they renamed the game to Sniper Ghost Warrior moving forward. In the game, we play as a Russian sniper that's going around and taking out the bad guys in Italy and other areas. The big claim to fame for the game, if there ever was one to say, was the fact that it uses an advanced ballistic system to calculate wind, bullet drop, and your breathing cycle, which is awesome. If it worked. 9 out of 10 times your bullet will just go wherever the hell it wants, and if you happen to get a machine gun, then the game goes donkey shit insane and won't work at all. You can be point blank trying to shoot somebody with a machine gun, and you'll miss. It's like the bullets just repel off the enemy. Plus, there's only 10 levels. The game is ridiculously short. The most recent game in this franchise was Sniper Ghost Warrior Contracts 2, and I doubt we'll see another one anytime soon. I mentioned this one during the Duke Nukem section because I absolutely loathe early PC platformers. Duke Nukem 2, however, was kind of fun, but the format was used and abused by Apogee to rebrand whatever concept they wanted, and Biomenace is exactly that, a reskinned, stupid game. My chief complaints are the exact same as they are for Duke Nukem. You can't dodge anything, you get hit with mandatory damage, you have limited ammunition that you cannot replace, and it's just a bad time. Story-wise, you play as Snake Logan, a CIA agent, and that's the most I know about this game because it's insufferably boring. You know what, while we're at it, let's just throw in Monster Bash as well. Monster Bash is another Apogee game in the same vein of Duke and Biomenace. You play as Johnny Dash, whose dog has been captured by Count Chuck, and it's up to you to go full John Wick and get your dog back. But then again, it feels sluggish, you take mandatory damage, and I just genuinely do not like Apogee's platforming games. I'd like to give them a shake again, but I'm not going to pretend that they're good, because they're not. BattleTech is an IP that's been around for a long time. Before it was a series that would eventually create what is known as Activision's MechWarrior, BattleTech was the original line from FASA Corporation. BattleTech itself, from what I know, is a rule set for an RPG, and MechWarrior is a line of games that falls within that universe. I might have mixed some information up on that because FASA and Activision have a very turbulent relationship when it comes to licensing rights. But what I can say is that FASA allowed Infocom to create two very rudimentary computer RPGs in the vein of BattleTech, known respectively as BattleTech the Crescent Hawk's Inception and BattleTech the Crescent Hawk's Revenge. Now, the first game is wonderful. Archaic, yes, but once you understand how to play it, it's just another RPG with occasional mech battles. However, the sequel is a totally different game. Revenge is a real-time tactics game where you have to control a few units that do not heal between missions, and if you aren't aware of that going in, you're in for a rough time. Enemy units will decimate you, you're forced to make key choices early in the game that will come back to haunt you, and this game is a massive middle finger to those who enjoyed the first one. Some people like it, I'm one of those who genuinely don't. BattleTech still thrives to this day, and there's one that was released in 2018 that my friends swear by. The original Batman game was tough enough as it was. It was an isometric game akin to Solstice on the NES, and because it was on the ZX Spectrum, the graphics consisted of 3 colors, and those colors were red, pink, and blue most of the time. That's just how the ZX Spectrum was. You give my toddler some crayons, they can create a ZX Spectrum game. Then, we had Batman the Caped Crusader, which is an absolute, resolute, unstoppable, pain-in-the-ass chore to play. Imagine trying to not only find items, but also what to use said items on, all the while dying. Slowly! This game has a head at the bottom. At first I thought it was my health. No, that's a timer, and that timer goes non-stop, and it will kill you if it runs out. And, by the way, it's also your health bar. It's a health bar timer. So good luck. I played this with a walkthrough, and even in having a walkthrough hold my hand like a toddler, I wasn't able to beat it because of the time constraints. This is a trial and error nightmare, and in my opinion is one of the worst DOS games I have ever played. The most recent Batman game, if I recall, is the Telltale series known as The Enemy Within. The original Half-Life was a really fun game, at least until Valve kept patching it into the monstrous mess of nonsense that it is now. With the original Half-Life being a landmark title for Valve, they made the decision to add 2 more expansions to the base game, Blue Shift and Opposing Force. I've never played Blue Shift, mostly because I don't like Half-Life. Sue me, shoot me, kick me in the dick, shove a potato up my ass. But I did try Opposing Force, and let me tell you, if you don't like the original Half-Life, you're going to hate Opposing Force, because it is hands down one of the most trolly games I've ever played. This is like Cat Mario of the Half-Life franchise. It's cheap, it annoys the fuck out of me. Everything about this game feels wrong to me, and I gave up on it after trying it for 3 days straight with 0 progress. 0. The most recent game in the Half-Life universe was Half-Life Alyx, which was a VR game. I think it's fair to say we won't see Half-Life 3 in our lives. Valve just doesn't seem interested in making it. You remember that franchise with Bruce Willis where he does all this badass stuff at Nakatomi Plaza during a Christmas party, thus making Die Hard a Christmas movie? What about video games based on the film? There's plenty out there, but the first one was a DOS game. It's not good. It's horrible. This particular entry is one of 3 games, but the DOS one is the one that absolutely blows. You start as someone who looks like Bruce Willis, walking backwards, right, left, and forward while managing your inventory. Occasionally, if you're lucky, you'll engage in the most PCP-induced kung fu session with an enemy that walks freely past you, ignoring you most of the time. I don't know how this one got off the assembly line, but Dynamics was a newer company, and they didn't really know what they were doing at the time. These were the same folks who made Betrayal at Krondor as well, pioneers of the digitalized actor movement. Die Hard has come a long way since its original game, but the quality has always been relatively subpar. The most recent game was a phone game simply called Die Hard, and it's an endless runner. Well, those are some of the worst I've played, and I'm sure I'll encounter more. What did you think of the list? Are there any games you would suggest that I play that would ruin my day? Feel free to add them down below. If you don't mind, give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and as always, from my family to your family, good energy, good vibes, Fortify out.